So I've seen these some videos talking about. I just watched a video talking about the Oberth effect, as well as seeing how we use planets and whatnot as basically slingshots. We can slingshot spaceships and things along those lines using the gravity of planets and moons and things along those lines. Um, and they say there's no free energy here, and so this is just like one thing that I decided, like, started thinking about with this is, okay, so based off of these videos and what they're saying and stuff, right? That energy, the increase in energy that you are getting by basically um, exhausting or propelling yourself during a critical moment in either your path of travel or your, I guess you could say, orbit, right? If you're using this propellant to maximize your propulsion and increase your speed more efficiently, right? That energy that you're tapping basically to increase your speed more efficiently is coming from somewhere, right? And where is that coming from? Well, it's coming from the planet or moon that you are using basically to do this. And so every time we use our moon or our Earth to do this, we are taking small amounts of energy from the collected system on Earth, right? Because Earth has a set amount of energy on the planet, right? And every time we launch something into space, that is being taken out of, in theory, our planet's energy pool. And so my question, I guess I'm trying to get to here is, long term, what are the effects of this, right? Because if we keep doing that, we reduce the energy of our planet over time. It's a small change, right? But over time, small changes add up. And if that causes our orbit of our planet to be altered because the energy of the planet is reduced, so our orbit is altered, how much do we need to alter it before it completely collapses and we destroy our planet's orbit? And do we even know what would happen if that happened? And where's that limit, right? Because I don't know if anyone is really thinking about this. Maybe this is something that's been considered, and it's been considered as a non-threat or not worth thinking about. But in the future of our society, right, in the next 10 to 20 years, space travel is, in theory, according to what they say, going to be a very big part of the world, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to colonize the moon. Let's go to Mars. Let's do all these things, right? Let's get into space. You know, the long term, I'm just thinking about like the long term of this. Is that even feasible? And does that make sense? And should we be limiting how much goes into space starting now? Should there be restrictions put on what gets launched and what doesn't and stuff, considering the future, right? Because in 100 years, say, I mean, honestly, like, I don't even know where society is going to be in 100 years. We could be back in the Stone Age for all I know. Um, right? But imagine if technology and society keeps advancing. In 100 years, space travel is going to be the norm, in theory. And if space travel is the norm, then these things that are potentially not a threat are going to be something that needs to be considered. And I'm just curious on how well they're being considered and what's being done to mitigate this risk. And can anything even really be done to mitigate this risk? And is our fantasy of colonizing the solar system actually flawed because leaving our planet works to destroy it? I don't know. But this is just something that I started thinking about, and it really does seem like something to be concerned with because, as everyone says, there's no free energy. And so every time you leave this planet, you are taking energy away from this planet, and that is not being returned to us through solar radiation. The energy from the sun is not adding mass back to the planet. It's not adding momentum back to the planet. At least I don't think so. So I'm really just curious what exactly this all means and where it's going in the future. This is not something that's going to be detrimental right now. However, it definitely will be in the future, I feel. Either that or we totally misunderstand how this all works. So there's two options here. We either need to rewrite how exactly gravity functions, or we need to start considering that maybe it's not a good idea to be launching things into space without consideration. Because we don't know what the effects actually are. Not truly, because there's no precedent for it. And so that's just a concern. And a little thing that I'll add on here, the whole satellite mesh, we got too much junk in space. And we really need to start thinking about this because it's actually the most absurd and stupid thing ever. We're going to have this advanced space travel, but we're going to have a literal minefield around our planet because we just have so much junk. And that debris is not just floating there stagnant. It is orbiting the planet. It is highly dangerous and extremely. It's deadly junk that is in space that is going to make space travel impossible, regardless of everything else. So there's just certain considerations I feel like have not been considered, and it's extremely ignorant not to be considering them, I feel. So for all of the ingenious technology, we really need to start thinking about long-term effects more than the immediate. I feel like the immediate is so hyper-focused in our minds, no one thinks about what are the future generations going to deal with. That always seems to be that's a future problem, and it really shouldn't be, because if you give enough problems to the future is not going to be able to handle them, and there will be no future to handle them. You know, eventually those problems are no longer the future's problems and they're yours. And so maybe you'll be dead when it becomes a problem, but that's really just a messed up concept, a messed up thing to do. Be like, listen, we had a great life. Good luck to the rest of you. That's just wrong. That's just wrong. Anyway, peace out.
All right. So, again, I feel like I do a pretty good job of talking through these things while I'm doing them, but I really feel like, unless there's some misunderstanding that I'm having with how this all functions, we really need to be considering about the long-term effects of our actions and what they mean for the future. Maybe it's not a big deal now, but what about later? It's the same thing with climate change, right? We have to learn from our lessons, because we didn't think it was a big deal then, but we're realizing it is actually a really big deal, right? This is a really big deal, and we're still not smart enough to realize that, right? It's literally smack dab in our face. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where it's like, wow, this weather's been really weird. I wonder why. I wonder why it's been so weird. I wonder why we don't get as much snow as we get, and then we got a ton of snow this year. I wonder why it's been so cold, and it hasn't really been that summer. I wonder why we don't get as much rain or whatever. I wonder why it's all like this. I wonder why our climate has changed. Why has our climate changed? Could it be because of climate change? No way, right? So it's really quite absurd, right? We have lived through this experience once and failed, in my opinion. I think we failed. I think at this point we just need to start adapting, because there's no stopping it. It's too late. That's my opinion, though. We'll see. We'll see. However, this is something that we can potentially stop, right? Because we're doing this, launch everything into space, right? Just throw it in space. That'll solve our problems. And the more things you put in space, the more debris gets into space, whether you mean to or not. Things happen, right? And the more things in space, the more junk there's in space, the more space is not usable, right? And so it's not the same as on Earth, where you can just tuck it in a corner, right, and pretend it's not there, right? We do that with our landfills. Oh, we don't have all this junk. We just bury it, right? We just pretend like it doesn't exist. You can't do that in space because it doesn't stay in one clump, just like, oh, just compile all the junk right into this one clump and we'll make a new moon or something. I don't know, right? You can't do that because all of this junk isn't just sitting there stationary. It's zipping through space, and it's metal, and it's all kinds of other stuff. And so when it's flying that fast, it hits something, it causes damage. And right now, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, it's not that bad. No one cares. But I guarantee you that once it starts to be a problem, it will really be a problem, and it will be too late. And that's just talking about the satellites, right? But if you really think about the long-term effects of space travel, I don't think it's out of the question to disrupt the Earth's orbit, or at the very least, the moon's orbit. And what are the long-term effects of that? We don't know. What happens if we make the moon move closer by just a few thousand feet? Or maybe that's not the best example, but like if we have it move forward by a few thousand kilometers, what kind of effect is that going to have on our planet? We don't know. And I feel like this is very risky. This is very dangerous. And we use this slingshot method all the time to help give things a little extra boost. And if that extra boost energy is getting tapped from the celestial object that it is orbiting around, then you are depleting the energy in that object. And eventually, when something runs out of energy, it starts to fall. That's just physics. That's just what happens. What goes up comes down so long as it doesn't have enough energy to keep going round, right? And so if we keep taking energy away just a little bit, it's just a little bit, it's not a big deal, it's just a little bit. At some point, it will be too much. And it'll go from not having an effect to a detrimental one. And I don't think we've properly addressed the situation. I don't think we've properly addressed what we are and what we're doing. Maybe we haven't found aliens because aliens realized that it's best to just stay on their planet. Because if they don't, they might just destroy themselves. Who's to say, though? Who's to say? I don't know, right? I don't know. That's just a theory, though. I have no idea. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Maybe my concerns are unfounded. But I do think it's something we need to be thinking about. At the very least, it needs to be considered. And if it hasn't been considered yet, it needs to be considered. And I'm probably going to have to do some more research into this just to clarify, to see. But the thought occurred to me because I was watching a video about it. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense that energy comes from that. But at the same time, that's also concerning. And so, I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So, yeah. Peace out.